Welcome to Watch Me, folks. Today I have with me the SBGA415 Grand Seiko from their Four Seasons collection. This one is called the Winter and it's all titanium and really quite special, and I'm gonna go over some of the features, the build, the design, and a quick pros and cons list. So let's get started. This watch retails for $6,300 US, and the case is made of what Seiko likes to call high intensity titanium. Typically titanium has a bad rap for being kind of dull in the finished metal, and sort of feels a bit more gray than stainless steel. So one of the things Grand Seiko has done is they've still done alternating finishing, and Grand Seiko really are among the best when it comes to polishing techniques. So you can see the sheer clarity of the polished surfaces on this watch, and you can't really tell it's a titanium watch unless you have a keen eye for the minor tonal differences between a stainless steel case and a titanium case. There is a polished top and bottom as well to catch more light, and the overall profile has enough angles to make it interesting. The angular drop on the edge of the lugs, the minor curve of the case itself, and the polished line in the bottom of the case on the side all help to kind of give it a little more visual interest. The box crystal is done extremely well, and it adds to the overall visual appeal of the watch, and it doesn't sit too high compared to some of the other box crystal implementations. And overall this is a 40mm case, and it's right around 13 odd millimeters thick. The lug to lug is around 47 millimeters. Onto the dial. So if I move it a little closer, you can see the dial has almost like a cloud-like pattern that has been created with fine sort of lines and almost like scratches. These really evoke like a stormy sky. When you look at this and when you think it looks like a cloud pattern and a stormy gray stormy sky, it immediately gives you that imagery. And the detail itself is not repetitive. It feels organic. It feels like it was a palette in which they decided to do some art, and it has an artwork quality to it that is undeniable. And the closer you get and the more keen you are to look at the details, the more you will appreciate it. As you can see in this angle, there are tonal differences as well that you won't immediately notice, but once you start observing the details, you see there's a mild tonal difference between some of the areas of the dial. It's a lighter gray to a silver to a darker gray, and this gives visual depth and a quality that is really very few watches out there can boast this level of detail. Onto like the hands, the famous Zaratsu polishing really stands apart on the edge of the hand, which just has the sword like light reflectivity, as you can see as I move this around gently, and the center of it is brushed, so it just helps give a sense of precision, and the polished edges look razor sharp. They give a visual quality like none other. The markers themselves are also raised and have nice visual depth to it, and the GS logo is a lovely touch. One of the things I like about the Winter in particular is the blue second hand. I think the blue second hand adds quality to the overall presentation, because it's a fairly muted version in the entire range, right? So you have the sort of pink color spring watch, and you have the green one, and then you have the blue. They're all nice rich colors, but the Winter is like a slightly more dark and gloomy sort of brooding visual aesthetic, and the blue second hand indeed helps in giving a little bit more personality and a flair to the overall presentation. So it's a polished case back with a see-through sapphire crystal. You can see very nice finish on the rotor. This is the 9R65 movement with 72-hour power reserve. This is indeed the spring drive movement, which has a lot of fans and then folks who don't want to consider it a mechanical watch. I don't want to go too deep into that whole argument. Let's just say that it's its own beast, and when it comes to fine watchmaking, I don't think there's anything wrong with using technology to make a mechanical watch more accurate. That's my take on it, at least. So I would strongly consider this in the running if you are in this price point. Onto the bracelet. This is a very nicely machined titanium bracelet. There are very few titanium bracelets out there that can boast this level of refinement and I'd say soft quality. One of the things that I personally do not like are bracelets that feel very heavy and sharp on the edges, right? The finish on the edge of the bracelet makes a very big impact on how it feels on your wrist and how comfortable it is to wear for longer durations. And that's something that Grand Seiko have really excelled at. It just, if you run your fingers onto it, it just feels super smooth and soft. That really helps the feel on the skin and makes it more comfortable to wear. And the weight balance is also perfect because it's titanium and they don't have a heavy case with a light bracelet or vice versa. It's a very balanced watch overall, and that helps in wearability and overall comfort. The clasp is a fairly straightforward clasp, although I do quite like the lettering and sort of finish on the logo here. It adds to the overall package. However, I do fully expect that this will get scuffed and tarnished over time, because that was the part that typically ends up taking most of the impact when you wear the watch. Pros, clearly I would say this level of finish and quality is hard to beat at this price point. You're not going to really find a watch in the 6K price point that's going to have this type of visual depth and appeal on the dial and the markers and the attention to detail on the case and the finish, right? Second pro for me personally is I really like the titanium implementation. I'm a fan of titanium watches when they're done right, not the dull gray brushed finished titanium. I like the material for its benefits in terms of weight balance and how it can be more easier to wear for longer durations, but it has to be done right, and I don't think there is a watch out there in this price point that has a better implementation on titanium. I do quite like the spring drive movement. I like that it has a good power reserve. It's very easy to wind. The winding mechanism actually is quick, and you can see the power reserve actually jumps up fairly quickly when you wind it, unlike some of the other watches where you have to keep winding it for a long time to get to the max power reserve. And the accuracy is phenomenal as well. It's rated like a plus or minus 1 second a day. You would have heard this time and again, the Seiko name, that stigma still hasn't left them. They did rebrand themselves to put Grand Seiko on the top, and few years back they used to say Seiko on the top and say Grand Seiko on the bottom. So technically Grand Seiko is it's sort of like its own brand at this point. So if you are looking for brand recognition, yes, the watch collectors and the watch geeks will 100% appreciate what you have on your wrist, but the average person is not going to notice or recognize this watch. Not a con for me. Personally, I really don't mind or care as much. I don't like the see-through case backs having prints on them. I don't know why brands do this. I mean, I know it's a Grand Seiko, I can see it on the dial loud and clear. There is really no reason to block off the see-through case back with another print. It seems completely unnecessary and ruins the display. There are no adjustments on the bracelet whatsoever. There is a half link here. I don't remember if I had another half link on this watch, but that's about it. If it fits, good for you. If it doesn't, too bad. There are no micro adjustments, at least not that I can see, which I'm not a big fan of. I do like bracelets that give you some flexibility with micro adjustments, because your wrist does tend to expand and shrink through the seasons. The contrasting date window, I don't think it should have been white. Once I told you, or once you notice it, you're not going to not notice it. It's one of those things which, honestly, I prefer no date watches myself, but in this case, yes, it's you know, I know people who really want a date complication, and I would have preferred it to be color matched to some degree at least. So that's pretty much it, folks. Hope you liked my quick review and overview on the Grand Seiko Winter SBGA415. If you liked the video, please remember to like and subscribe, and there's more content coming soon.